Hello, everyone. I'm here to talk about potential trade targets as the trade deadline approaches. I think we've all figured out by now this is going to be a more exciting trade deadline than we normally see from the NFL. Now, a lot of trades for Minnesota are unlikely, as they only have $1,171,683 in cap room per over the cap. So any trade they really make will involve a lot of restructuring, whether it's the player coming in, players currently on the roster, potentially both. You get the idea. So keep in mind, any trade is unlikely, but I do have four guys who could potentially be tradable, and that I just found interesting enough to at least talk about. Whether or not it actually happens, it's something to talk about, And here we go. And by the way, this is all for what I guess you would consider the right price, as I think this is a team that wouldn't want to give up a first-round draft choice. So keep that in mind. I'm not saying like mortgage, the whole future for one player. So I'm sorry to disappoint. There's no Patrick Peterson on this list. But my first one is Raiders tight end Jared Cook. And I know that one seems a little weird on the surface there, but they seem to be wanting this receiving threat tight end. And we've seen this over the past few years now, where we just drafted Tyler Conklin in the 5th round. He's not doing much. We drafted Bucky Hodges the other year in the 5th or 6th round, I believe, and he didn't even make the final roster. And if you remember right, before we drafted Bucky Hodges, right before that draft, we brought in Jared Cook on a free agent visit. And there were reports of them desperately trying to make it so he wouldn't leave the building, and ultimately he did, and he signed with Oakland. So yeah, and with the way he does play, he'd be a de facto third receiver for this team, and we would use more two tight end sets. He would give another red zone options, and that two tight end set could result in a better running game as well. So there are two issues with this. Well, possibly three, if you consider one of them an issue. He is 31 years old right now. It's the last year of his contract, which can be both good and bad here. But that last year carries a $5.675 million cap hit. And like I said, we only got almost $1.2 million in cap, which can become problematic for this. So, like I said, at the very, very beginning of this video, we have to restructure some people here if we are going to make a trade of any form. And this would be one of those things. So, now the 1 year thing could be beneficial and also potentially hurt the team, because we don't know how long. Kyle Rudolph, he has an interesting contract situation going forward. He has a huge cap hit for next year, and I think all of the guaranteed dead money is gone for when that happens next offseason. And so you might have a choice of, do you want to keep Jared Cook or Kyle Rudolph if you do get him? So this 1 year thing could be problematic in some ways, just because if it were 2 years, then you could let go of Kyle Rudolph knowing you have Jared Cook. But in that case, you'd have to sign Jared Cook, then let go of Kyle Rudolph, and then that'll be a whole thing. But for at least 1 year, this could be the Trey Burton red zone guy that DeFilippo used last year, or supposedly helped used for the whole. He was like the red zone guy, supposedly, which we haven't seen much of that lately in Minnesota, but that's okay, because we don't have the guy. This would be a guy to add into there. Plus, it might help if we run in the red zone. Just little bit. But yeah, moving on from Jared Cook here, I have the Buccaneers corner, Brent Grimes. And Brent Grimes is more on this list because we have Mike Hughes gone out for the year. And Mike Hughes was kind of supposed to be this nickel corner that we were supposed to have. And it was going to be either him or Mackenzie Alexander. When Newman retired and decided he's going to be a coach. And I don't see Newman coming back to play. So Brent Grimes, here he is. And I do think the fact that with Hughes gone, and it has turned into, oh, it's Mackenzie Alexander or bust at nickel, pretty much, because your other options are Marcus Sherrills and, excuse me, are Marcus Sherrills and Holton Hill. Not the most solid options, if you get what I mean. So, and what would Brent Grimes do? He has made a career playing the nickel. He is 35, which is a kind of an issue, but at least he has the experience of playing the nickel. There would be less communication problems, probably. You probably add some leadership into there as well, I would assume. I haven't followed his career that closely, but he's still playing okay at the very least. The Buccaneers defense doesn't have much in general in the back end. He's kind of the only one worth noting. And since he is 35, Bucks aren't that great. They might want to get their younger players out in the field more. There we go. This would be one thing where you just ship him over to Minnesota, potentially starts over Mackenzie Alexander at some point, or at least becomes a great depth option for 1 year. Because his contract is only through this season. Problem is monetary. Money. This is going to be a trend, by the way, with the whole money. That's too much money, which is, his is $8 million on the cap hit, which is insane. That would have to come down a lot. And although the player himself is intriguing, I don't necessarily see it happening because of this $8 million cap hit. But put him down on the list because it was very intriguing to me. And because the Raiders seem to be selling everyone, I do have Carl Joseph on this list. Now, Carl Joseph would probably take the most to actually trade for, based on the fact that he was a first-round draft pick just a few short years ago. But they do seem to be getting rid of everyone. So maybe. And the reasoning behind this, I know, because some people might be like, well, safety's not even an issue. Well, Iloka's on a 1-year deal. The same thing I was talking about with Rudolph is kind of true for Dejo as well. He might have too big of a cap hit for them to want to carry on, and it's kind of a similar thing where they might let him go or he has to restructure. So, questionable future there. So maybe he can come in, because Joseph could be a potential long-term option since he's only 25. He's still he was a former first-round draft pick. He has, he still has that fifth-year option thing going for him. And the money, $3.241 million cap hit this year, which that's the easiest one so far to overcome here in terms of these guys. But he's more of an in-the-box safety. You could see him potentially in a Deion Buchanan role. So because we are seeing more passing these days, because he is more of an in-the-box guy, he will hit you. He is good in the run game. He does have 2 interceptions over his career so far with the Raiders, but he also has over 100 tackles. He's a very sure tackler, and he can actually hit people. So maybe in some nickel or dime situations, you can see him at linebacker, especially. That could become handy if let's say Anthony Barr goes because of money things or some other thing. They just don't view it as. Nonetheless, let's just say, for the sake of this argument, that Anthony Barr isn't given his long-term contract extension. And then you might see him more of a linebacker role coming years. Not bad. And one issue with this would be you probably have to get rid of one safety, whether that's Iloka or Anthony Harris, and I do think they like them both. But like I said, you could potentially view him as this hybrid linebacker like a Deion Buchanan, and say like, well, no, we can just get rid of a linebacker and he can fill this role. So that could happen. I don't know how much that one would cost at all, because I don't think either Jared Cook or Brent Grimes would cost more than a 4th-round pick to come into Minnesota. So, yeah. And then this last one. This last one could potentially be my favorite one, just because it's a guard. I feel like we need a guard. We don't have a run game. We need a guard. And the guard that I think could potentially be the best available guard on the market, that's not from Oakland, at least, in Osemele or Gabe Jackson, if everyone is truly for sale over there, was Jamon Brown from the Los Angeles Rams. And Jamon Brown, he was a 3rd-round draft pick back in 2015. And, like most offensive linemen these days, he kind of struggled out of the gate. You saw some issues. But he did start for the Rams last season in 2017. And he began the year very poorly, because last year was a very mixed bag of very two different extremes. And this is per PFF, because I know some people don't like PFF, but for offensive linemen, I don't really have any other numbers to prove these things. So to PFF we go. And by PFF, the first 5 games of 2017, he did allow the most pressures for a guard through those first 5 games. And then the next 5 games, he only allowed 1 pressure and had the highest pass blocking efficiency among all guards in the league with a 99.4 rating there. And he started this year on suspension, and his backup, Austin Blythe, kind of has just run away with the job, just in case you guys are wondering, well, why would they get rid of him if he's starting to play well? And that's because of the suspension and his backup, who is currently rated with a 78.8 PFF rating, which is good to be the 3rd overall guard in the entire league. And Jamon Brown only has 1 year left on his rookie deal, and his cap hit is $1.871 million. Now that one is intriguing because of the 1.871, and we have 1.71. So we are very close to being able to fit that one. Which means you could realistically say, okay, Kyle, we're just going to restructure you now, get that done, you might get a lot more. Or, or Deho, or you can't really do that with Barr because of the 5th-year option. But you get what I mean. We have players who can restructure to fit a guy that's that close. And I know that could be one thing where, like, well, you could be getting one of the worst guards in the league, but you could also be getting one of the best. And this is at the very least good depth, very good depth, if you're able to pull this in. And I think this is another one that might only cost like a 4th or a 5th round pick. So it wouldn't be that horrible, especially considering we're likely getting a 3rd round draft choice from the whole Sam Bradford compensatory thing. So if you give up a 4 for Jamon Brown, who may end up being your starting guard for years to come, it would be kind of worth it. Because he's only 25 right now. He has guard/tackle versatility, although he has played better at guard in the NFL than tackle. The other thing, he plays right guard, and that could be key for multiple things. Mainly if they really don't trust Brian O'Neill going into this, because it looks like Riley Reif might be able to come back this week, and I think this is the first week we really gauge how much trust they have in the rook and Brian O'Neill. And if we see Rashad Hill back out there, they don't really trust him going forward, at least for this season. And then we're stuck with this whole right side combination of Remmers trying to learn a new spot in right guard, Rashad Hill being the right tackle, which just isn't acceptable, really. But if you have Jamon Brown, he plays right guard. And what can you do with your current right guard? Move him back to right tackle. And the line looks better, at least for a little bit. And just so we're clear, the Rams do run a zone blocking scheme with Sean McVay. So he fit that scheme last year, I would assume it would be able to fit into the one that we have here in Minnesota. So I would just like to know what you guys think down in the comments below. I do understand this video could be a little weird just because I know a lot of these are unlikely. But yeah, I want to know what you guys think about any of these options, any other options you may have thought of, or, just saying how dumb I am for even mentioning people of this on this list, I guess, given the fact that the cap space is so low. But until next time, I bid y'all adieu.